All right. I have brand new polls showing that only Joe Biden will beat Donald Trump. I have polls showing Joe Biden beating Donald Trump. I'm not a contrarian. I'm just looking at numbers. I don't know what Rob Reiner and George Clooney are looking at. So I'll go over real polls with you, A-plus polls that show that Joe Biden is doing better since the debate. I'm not I am emotionally invested in Joe Biden because I've grown to like him. But if I looked at polls that showed Newsom, Harris, Bashir, Shapiro, Paulus would beat Trump, the hell with Joe Biden. I've been looking at polling that shows only he can beat Trump, and he's beating Trump. I'm not trying to have a fresh hot take. I swear to you. I'll go over it a little later on. There's something very weird going on with these Democrats and donors abandoning Joe Biden. Well, I'll get to all that momentarily. We have breaking news. As a New Mexico judge dismisses his involuntary manslaughter case, actor Alec Baldwin weeps into his hand, knowing this means he's not going to prison, and his wife Hilaria will now want 20 more Baldwinitos. That's the first thing he thought when the case was thrown out yesterday. Hilaria is going to want 20 more Baldwinitos. Up until Friday, Alec Baldwin had been on trial for recklessly aiming a prop gun that went off on set, killing the cinematographer for his movie Rust. Baldwin had no idea the gun was loaded. The judge on Friday threw the case out after the prosecutor admitted to withholding evidence that would have exonerated the 66-year-old actor. Sadly for everyone involved, the trial ended up having a way more original ending than Rust. AT&T announced that in 2022 and early 2023, incredibly personal and sensitive data of every call and text from every single wireless customer was compromised by hackers. AT&T called them hackers. That's a pretty nasty way to describe the brave men and women working for our national security agency. The FBI is reportedly now looking into this. Yes, I'm sure they are. Okay, we're going to need copies of every single compromised phone call and text message. We're going to need to know who made the calls, what they talked about, who wrote these texts, what was in those texts. Otherwise, we're never, ever going to be able to get to the bottom of this. Donald Trump has confirmed that he picked a running mate. All that remains now is measuring their neck for a noose. This is the mop-up for July 13th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed, and hit the notifications bell so you never miss my work. If you would like a free transcript of today's episode or previous episodes, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Hit the free transcripts menu. We have a lot of freebies over there, like a Harvard diploma and the transcripts. And these free transcripts are made possible by the idiots who buy garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com, like my Rudy Giuliani coffee mugshot. This is my get-rich-quick scheme. It's a mugshot of Rudy Giuliani on a coffee mug. It's a mugshot, this one of Donald Trump on a coffee mug, his mugshot on a coffee mug. Coffee mugshots. And you could also buy my Still a Democrat t-shirt with a wounded heart. It's a heart that's wounded. And we also have a Still a Democrat coffee mug. And my favorite, my Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. That's my favorite. It's a made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. That's what I ask you people to buy, but you don't listen. You buy the Trump fart filtration mask and the chef's apron that says, hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. I don't want you to buy the hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's apron. I don't want you to buy the Trump fart filtration mask. I want you to buy the smart stuff, like the made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. My biggest seller, hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's apron. Thanks for blistering my soul. 24 former Democratic members of the House and Senate signed an open letter Friday urging Joe Biden to step aside, saying he can't win. And who knows more about not being able to win than 24 former Democratic members of the House and Senate? Yes, let's listen to senators and congresspeople who couldn't get reelected. Let's have them tell us how Joe can win, how the Democrats can win without Joe. With just 114 days left until the election, Democrats are doing what they always do best, figuring out how to defeat their nominee. A wealthy Democratic donor from Los Angeles yesterday accused me of being divisive for suggesting the party should rally around Biden and focus on defeating Trump. He said, I'm being divisive. He said, this is why Democrats stay home on Election Day, because people like me who aren't supporting the people who don't support Biden. I'm divisive. He said, I need to have faith in the process. I said, you mean the process where nearly 20 million Democrats voted earlier this year in primaries across the country, and Biden defeated all his challengers, Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips, by a landslide? That process you're talking about? The process where for the past 6 months, all of us saw that when it comes to speaking, Joe has his good days and his bad days, but we all decided there are more important things than sounding slick. You mean that process where we all took a look at Joe Biden and agreed, yeah, he got older, but he's still the best man to defeat Trump? Are you talking about that process? And this donor said, no, the new process. See, there's a new process. And what is that? He says it's way more democratic. The new process apparently is a hastily called mini primary the last week of July in all 50 states and territories, even though it takes months to print the ballots and organize the polling precincts and clear primaries and caucuses in each state, which are monitored individually by the secretaries of state in each state, but that doesn't matter. He says after this hasty slapdash national primary, where you can't guarantee that every Democrat will have a chance to vote because it takes months, if not years, to work through the logistics of any primary, let alone a national primary. He says, we take the results from this literally half-baked primary, we take the results to a brand new open convention in Chicago in the middle of August. Joe Biden has released his 4,000 delegates 4 weeks from now. And the delegates and the superdelegates, Democratic strategists and lobbyists will fight it out to pick the next nominee. And we'll have a nominee. We'll have a mini primary, an open convention, and a nominee in 4 weeks. It's all going to come together, he said. Because after this national primary, nobody will challenge the new slates of electors when the Credentials Committee meets. He says to me, how do you know that? Don't you want change? The candidates, he says, will make speeches at the convention, maybe even hold a debate at the convention. And I said, wait, I thought we'd know who the nominee is before the convention, after the national primary. He said, no. That's why people are going to tune in to the convention. It's going to be a town hall, all in 4 days. Conventions last 4 days. And in 4 days, they're going to pick a presidential nominee and a vice president. These candidates will drop down from the sky along with the balloons, and those candidates will be absolutely perfect for everyone. We're finally going to get to vote for someone we believe in, and because it's Chicago, the new nominee will recreate Obama's 2008 Grant Park victory speech that he gave when he beat John McCain. Remember how we all cried because he was new and he promised change and he energized us. And then he got into the Oval Office and bailed out Wall Street. Not a single banker who crashed the economy went to prison. That kind of hope and change. Again, in Chicago, change and solidarity. Someone we can all be excited about, because we know when Obama got the nomination, everybody came together. The Clintons were right on board with Obama when he got the nomination. Like a tuning fork, the Democratic Party all got behind Obama and didn't try to sabotage him. So that's the new process. It's going to be like the old process when Obama got picked. It's a more democratic process where we throw out all the votes from the more than 50 primaries and caucuses we held since January, and instead we hold an incomplete national primary. We do that because we've never tried that before, and we have no idea how to do it or if it will even remotely work. So yes, we can. You got to have faith. And then we staged that open convention, which Democrats tried in Chicago back in 1968, and we all know how smoothly that went. And this is from a wealthy Democratic donor, a so-called adult. He's the adult in the room. This is a guy I've known for years. And he insists, I want all the things you do, David. I'm a liberal, I'm a lefty. But, it's complicated. Of course, he wants Medicare for all, but it's complicated. But here, it's not complicated. Tossing Joe Biden to the curb, not complicated. He says, why don't you have faith in the party? Why don't you believe we can do great things? I said, Medicare for all is a great thing. How come we can't do that? And he said, now is not the time to bring up Medicare for all because your party is in a crisis. Yes, a crisis that you and your rich friends created. Nobody wants to get rid of Joe Biden. Just you, the pundits, the lobbyists, and certain high-ranking members of the Democratic Party who feel they've been left out of the loop by Joe Biden. All the polling I'm looking at shows most people, yes, wish Joe Biden would step aside. But they don't like anybody, the so-called deep bench that the Democrats have. I will go over the polling. The so-called deep bench that we supposedly have, Joe Biden is the most popular candidate. And all the polling shows most Democrats wish Joe would drop out of the race. They also wish Donald Trump would drop out of the race. And they're voting for Joe Biden. So I said, why is it okay to take a risk on Vice President Harris or Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, Beshear, Shapiro, Polis? Why is it okay to take a risk on them, but not Medicare for all? And he says, what he always says, well, health insurance companies are a huge part of our GDP. He said, you can't disembowel 1/6 of our national economy overnight. I said, Bernie's plan was to disembowel it over a 5-year period. So the people who work in that industry can find new jobs. So I have to be realistic when it comes to Medicare for all. But I'm supposed to believe the Democratic Party can hold a national primary, an open convention, and just miraculously unite behind this brand new ticket in exactly 4 weeks. And he said, you underestimate the power of excitement. He said that. He said, this is how you energize the Democratic Party. No, you energize the party and independence by fighting for Medicare for all, free tuition at all public universities, protecting reproductive freedom, codifying Roe, and packing the Supreme Court in order to forgive all student debt and overturn Citizens United. That's how you energize independence in the Democratic Party. And finally, he dismissed me. He said, you know what? You're pathetic. And as he began to walk away, I said, that is the only thing you and I can agree on. I am pathetic. And I said, the fact that you dismiss me as pathetic, the discussion is over and you're going to walk away because I'm pathetic, as though someone being pathetic isn't worth your time. That is everything anybody needs to know about people like you and the other wealthy hucksters controlling the Democratic Party. You walk away from pathetic people. You don't try to help them. You think being pathetic is repulsive. And those are the people, not all, those are the people who want to get rid of Joe Biden. They think he's pathetic. They think he's old. He's doddering. Well, did you watch the debate? I couldn't listen. But what do I know? I'm not famous. I'm not a wealthy donor. I don't get calls from Obama or Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries. But you know who does? Ashley Judd. And yesterday, Ashley Judd wrote a heartfelt op-ed piece for USA Today. And she said Joe Biden should drop out because he can't win her home state of Tennessee. She offers no empirical evidence. She doesn't need to conduct a poll. She's talked to her friends back home in Tennessee, and she's concluded Joe Biden is not going to win Tennessee in November. I mean, maybe she's right. Ashley Judd is from Tennessee, so she would know. She would know whether Joe can win Tennessee. I don't know why. I mean, maybe he can't win Tennessee because of the debate. Or, I don't know, maybe it's because no Democrat has won Tennessee since 1996. Maybe. Al Gore lost Tennessee in 2000, and Tennessee is his home state. Maybe Tennessee isn't on the pathway to 270. Abortion is literally illegal in Tennessee right after fertilization. Okay? Not sure that's one of the states Democrats are planning to win. But USA Today published Ashley Judd's pleading to Joe Biden to step aside. He can't win Tennessee. Of course, no polling to back that up, but do we really need polling as to whether or not Joe Biden can win Tennessee? Can any Democrat win Tennessee? Ashley Judd? Vice President Harris, right? She's young. Yeah, I bet a vast majority of people from Tennessee would give anything for the chance to vote for Vice President Harris. Or Gavin Newsom, a blue state California coastal elitist like Gavin Newsom. He really connects with the poor pork and deep-fried pickle-loving people of Tennessee. But let's listen to Ashley Judd, because Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood is almost watchable. You know, you're channel surfing, you stop, you see, Yaya, nah. But who cares what David Feldman thinks? I'm not a movie star. I'm not a director or a donor. I don't run a hedge fund. I can't throw a party in Beverly Hills that bundles $30 million in donations like George Clooney. This week, as you all know, George Clooney, Rob Reiner, Rosie O'Donnell. I love Rosie O'Donnell. I really do. They all insisted that Biden doesn't stand a chance of winning in November. And I do love Rosie O'Donnell. And, you know, it's George Clooney, Rob Reiner, Rosie O'Donnell, and they're saying Joe Biden can't win in November. They've almost got me convinced that Joe can't seal the deal in November. I'm almost there. I just need to check in with Tobey Maguire, Peter Gallagher, and Roberto Benigni. Let me get a read off those other stars from the 90s before I get on the Joe must go bandwagon. There are now reports that $90 million in donations are being withheld from the Democratic Party. The spigot has been turned off. They're saying until Joe Biden quits the ticket, the $90 million that were pledged, you're not going to get it. Get rid of them. The donors have turned their backs on Joe Biden. And trust me, it's not because Joe repeatedly promises to allow Trump's tax cuts for the very wealthy to expire in 2025. He keeps saying Trump's tax cuts for the richest 1% expire next year, and I'm not going to renew them over and over again. But that has nothing to do with why the millionaires and the billionaires are abandoning Joe Biden, because they don't care about money. That's why they're millionaires and billionaires, because they don't care about money. Abigail Disney, who says Hollywood should stop donating to the DNC until Joe Biden steps down, she doesn't care about money. Abigail Disney is worth $200 million. She's an heir to the Disney fortune. She's not thinking about money. Never crosses her mind. That's why when Abigail Disney began producing documentaries about marginalized communities, she paid some of her black and female workers $750 a month to do 35 hours of work a week. You think Abigail Disney cares about money? Of course not. If Abigail Disney cared about money, she wouldn't, according to the Hollywood Reporter, she wouldn't have paid her female and black workers $750 a month to do 35 hours of work a week. She's not thinking about money. So it's not about Joe Biden saying he's going to let the tax cuts for the richest 1%, he's going to let that expire. She doesn't care about that. None of those billionaires and millionaires care. They know that Joe can't win. That's why they're speaking out. That's why they're withholding their donations. They, with absolute supreme certitude, they have declared that Joe Biden cannot win. And do you have any polling on that? Yes, as a matter of fact, every rich person I've talked to in the Hamptons last weekend told me Joe can't win, and they're all going to vote for Trump. If you were to ask Abigail Disney or George Clooney or Barry Diller, every rich person I've spoken to last weekend, we all agree Joe can't win. And that's all the polling we need. The donors don't think Joe can win. And if he can't win, well, come November, we're going to have to vote for Donald Trump. Unless you let us find Joe's replacement. And, you know, the way this works, I don't have to tell my listeners how this works. If Joe can't win, the first people to know this are people like Abigail Disney and Barry Diller and Diane von Furstenberg and Rob Reiner. They know first. Then it trickles down to the rest of us. And we begin to realize, hey, wait a second. Joe can't win. I better vote for Trump, because that's how voters choose a candidate. We're ordinary voters. We're just like Barry Diller, Rob Reiner, George Clooney, and Abigail Disney. We like winners. We only want to be around winners, just like Barry Diller, Rob Reiner, George Clooney, and Abigail Disney. There are no losers at the Hamptons. And American voters are like that. We only like winners because losers are depressing. So forget all the good work Joe Biden has done, relieving student debt, creating the longest job expansion in American history, getting inflation down 2 days ago to almost 3%, rebuilding our roads and bridges with union jobs, and making the single biggest investment in green energy in the world. Voters don't care about that. They're going to vote for Donald Trump and rip up the Constitution because Joe Biden can't win in November. Why would you vote for Joe Biden if he can't win in November? Americans only vote for winners. Wouldn't it be great if instead of listening to Barry Diller, Jeffrey Katzenberg, David Geffen, Ashley Judd, Rob Reiner, George Clooney, Rosie O'Donnell, Charles Barkley, wouldn't it be great if instead Democrats listened to, the voter? Because, sarcasm aside, the voters are loving Joe Biden more because he's out in the wilderness. His polling has gone up since the debate. I don't know how these people, I'm going to play you some clips later. There is just this group think. They've decided, let's tell everybody that Joe Biden can't win. The same way back in 2000, there was this group think on the bus. The reporters on the bus decided Al Gore was a liar. They just decided that he was a liar based on nothing. They cherry pick certain sentences about his claiming that I invented the internet. He didn't say that, and he did invent the internet. They just decided that's a good narrative. Al Gore is a liar. And the new narrative that comes down from way up top from Mount Olympus, Joe Biden can't win. Joe Biden can't win. From the bottom of my heart, I honestly believe that Biden and the Democrats will win big when they cut Wall Street, Hollywood, and big money donors loose. Joe Biden should tell the wealthy donors, the bundlers, keep your effing $90 million. I say we build a party that listens to the half of this country that doesn't have $500 for an emergency. And we don't listen to the richest 1% of the 1% who have 500 grand to throw at super PACs. And they're getting worried that they're not getting what they paid for. They're worried that Joe Biden spent a little too much time sucking up to Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. That's not why we put our thumb on the scale in South Carolina and on Super Tuesday to install Joe Biden as the nominee. We didn't put you there, Joe, to form an alliance with Bernie Sanders. George Clooney began his infamous op-ed piece for the New York Times this week, listing his bona fides. And what are George Clooney's bona fides? How much money he has raised for the Democratic Party over the past 2 decades. Like the Supreme Court Citizens United decision, Clooney's piece in the New York Times this week made it abundantly clear that money is speech, and the more you have, the more you raise, the more speech you're entitled to. In his piece for the New York Times, he literally said he loves the process. He said, I love the process of raising money for Democrats. You know, I like George Clooney, as an actor. I also like Ashley Judd. Rob Reiner I could do without. Although When Harry Met Sally, I got to say that's the best Woody Allen movie that Woody Allen had nothing to do with. I mean, in terms of Woody Allen knockoffs, When Harry Met Sally is the best Woody Allen knockoff out there. So withholding donations is pretty serious stuff. The first 2 Democrats to call for withholding donations were Abigail Disney and James Carville. James Carville, you might remember, he fought Bernie in 2020. James Carville got Bill Clinton elected in 1992 and really hasn't accomplished anything since other than cashing enormous checks. And he fought Bernie in 2020. He complained back in 2020 when Bernie was beating Biden that the Democrats are cracking up. And this week, he joined George Clooney. James Carville wrote a piece in the New York Times saying there's absolutely no way Biden can win. Do you have any polling on that, James Carville? I mean, you would know. No polling. No polling. He polled his gut. And now James Carville is warning that if Joe Biden stays in the race, we're not just going to lose the election, we're going to lose our Constitution. And it will be Joe Biden's fault that Trump won in 2024. See what's going on here? This time around, the Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, they don't need to blame Putin, Julian Assange, or James Comey for losing the election because this time Hillary won't be the candidate. And they've decided to try something new, blaming the candidate for losing. They're actually going to blame the candidate for losing. How about that? Because it's not Joe's not their candidate. The Obama wing hates Joe Biden. You've probably heard the talk that Obama conspired with Clooney to write that piece in the New York Times. The Clintons and the Obamas, they do not like Joe. Now look, I wanted Bernie in 2020. And I don't make excuses. He lost the nomination. Clyburn from South Carolina, Obama, the Clintons, the Democrats put their finger on the scale in 2020 for the South Carolina primary. There's no question. But had the votes for Bernie been there, it would have weighed the scale heavier than the thumbs of the Clintons, the Clyburns, and the Obamas. And Bernie needed to win big. If Bernie was going to get the nomination, it had to be a revolution. So I didn't see the revolution. I accepted his defeat. And just like Bernie, I voted for Joe in 2020, and I'm voting for Joe Biden in 2024. He is not my first choice. But here's the thing. Joe Biden's going to win. But here's my promise. If Joe loses, which isn't going to happen, I will say I was wrong. I'll say Rob Reiner, Clooney, they were right. We should have replaced Joe Biden. But a lot of the Democrats who are calling for Joe Biden to step aside right now, they refuse to own their mistakes. You don't hear them owning their mistakes. Hillary, back in 2016, needed to flip 100,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. But she didn't campaign there. She read the polls that told her she was up more than 8 points in Michigan. So she didn't campaign there. I voted for her in the general election. But a lot of the people, most of the people who are calling for Joe Biden to step aside are the same ones who, after 2016, blamed Comey, Putin, and WikiLeaks for Trump winning. Russiagate was funded by Rob Reiner, the big website that was a repository of all the information linking Vladimir Putin to the 2016 election interference. That was funded by Rob Reiner, a big Hillary supporter, because Rob Reiner couldn't bring himself to say, she should have campaigned in Michigan. She should have gone to Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. They won't blame Hillary. That's the difference between me and people like Rob Reiner. And by the way, we all knew Biden's speech pattern was getting weak years ago. We all knew he had garbled syntax and is difficult to hear. We knew that a year ago, 2 years ago. I stopped watching him. I find him boring. And by the way, I like boring. After 4 years of Donald Trump, I like boring. I like a guy who whispers. I like a president who I don't have to watch on television, that he's just working quietly. We all knew he couldn't speak properly. He couldn't speak properly when he was 28. He was always bullied because he had a stutter. But yes, he's deteriorated in the past 2 years. So where were these people? Where was everybody when it was time to challenge Joe Biden in the primaries? Nobody challenged him. And now with 4 weeks to go before the convention, he has a really bad debate. And all of a sudden, the moneyed class that controls the Democratic Party, we got to get rid of him. Got to get rid of him because James Carville says this is the most important election in the history of our country. Our Constitution is at stake. Well, what does that mean? So if Trump wins, which he won't, in November, that's it for the Constitution? You're done? George Clooney goes back to Lake Como, where he already lives? Is he really is that, you just, okay, I tried to save the country. Trump won. No more Constitution. That's when I start fighting if Trump wins. Are you going to stick around, George Clooney, and fight? Or are you going to go back to Lake Como? Is Rob Reiner going to fight, or is he just going to sit on the beach in Malibu? But James Carville says this is life or death. This election is life or death. The Constitution is at stake, and James Carville has a solution. We replace Joe Biden. Bold move. Bold, bold move. And who do we replace Joe Biden with? Doesn't know. Times printed his story. Doesn't know who we replace Joe Biden with. The convention's a month away. Doesn't have the data. Just throw Joe Biden out and replace him with someone who will excite the voters. Yes. Somebody who will excite the voters. And who would that be? Don't know. I just know that Joe Biden needs to step aside. You know, you do the open convention, the national primary. Yeah. And so how do we put this new nominee through a vigorous filtration system of Oppo research so we know what Trump and the Republican attack machine is going to throw at this energetic, telegenic, articulate candidate? And then we're going to let the delegates pick a new vice president, and the entire party is going to come together as one, you know, just like they're doing right now, just like they always come together. See, I shouldn't have to tell James Carville this, but, you know, he is Joe Biden's age, so I'm sure he's beginning to slip. So let me remind James Carville, the reason presidential elections last 2 years is because of the filtration process built into the system. We have primaries, debates, town halls, caucuses. Candidates dig up dirt on each other. The primaries, the town halls are the Bonneville salt flats. It's where the candidates are put through the paces to see what they've got. But you're going to throw that all away, right? The only other candidate besides Joe Biden who has been put through the rigors of that filtration process is Vice President Harris. That happened back in 2019. We forget she didn't make it to 2020. She dropped out of the race before the Iowa caucuses. She didn't even make it to the starting gate. Now, Joe Biden wouldn't have picked Harris as his vice president had he not thoroughly vetted her. She's clean. There's no way she would have become his vice president had they not gone through everything. That means Vice President Harris is the only potential nominee out there in the Democratic Party who is clean, who is certifiably clean. We have no idea what kind of dirt there is on Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or Andy Beshear or Josh Shapiro. But here's the thing about dirt. Even we know Harris is clean. But with Donald Trump and this Republican Party and Fox News, there doesn't have to be dirt. Trump can just spread lies, create dirt. And it takes months, if not years, for a Democratic candidate to become inoculated from those lies. They're already floating the birther crap with our vice president. I'm already saying this, the birth certificate, they're doing the same, it's the same thing. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you give in to the propaganda machine and we don't have anybody run. But in a month, we're going to find somebody? We already have Joe Biden. And if something happens, God forbid, we have her after the election. It's a winning pair, Biden and Harris, after the election. Now, let's just say Joe Biden is talked into quitting. It's got to be Vice President Harris who gets the nomination. It's got to be. And they're going to throw fake dirt at her. We know she's clean, but we have no idea how she's going to handle that fake dirt, because she didn't go through the filtration process of the primaries. She dropped out before the Iowa caucuses. So we don't know how she stands up under, I don't want to say pressure, but character assassination. They are going to destroy Doug Emhoff. He's a corporate lawyer. If you're a corporate lawyer, you can manufacture dirt on a corporate lawyer. And they're going to destroy his kids. They will find things on his kids. They'll make crap up the way they're doing with Hunter Biden. And how will she hold up? You see, the process for Vice President Harris will start in December of 2024. After Joe Biden is reelected, the attack machine gets their sights on our vice president. That's because she's the presumptive nominee for 2028. Remember Trump digging up dirt on Hunter Biden in 2019? That's why Trump got impeached, because Trump knew Joe Biden was going to get the nomination in 2020. So he ordered Rudy to go to Ukraine to dig up dirt on Biden. That's the way it works. They start in on Harris in December of this year after Joe is reelected. And it won't matter what's true. It's how she responds. Joe Biden's son is going to jail for nothing. For nothing. When he was in the throes of crack addiction, he bought a gun the wrong way. And he's going to end up going to jail for that. So whoever thinks they can take over for Joe Biden between now and the convention, you have no idea what's in store for you and your family. Ask Joe Biden. Ask Joe Biden. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. The ticket is fine. Joe is inoculated. You can't. The Republican attack machine, they can't hurt him. You know, even Jim Jordan is saying, we're not going to be able to impeach the president. Can you imagine if we were just finding out about Hunter Biden now? Joe would be in a lot of trouble. But he's had 5-6 years to have all the dirt they were ever going to make up about him thrown in his face. And that dirt doesn't stick because they've been throwing it for 5 years. Like I said, it takes months, if not years, for fictitious dirt to stop sticking. So if you pick someone other than Joe Biden, it's, what are they going to invent? What are they going to invent about Harris, Newsom, Whitmer, Polis, Shapiro? What are they going to invent? And will there be enough time to counteract CNN's both siding it? Well, it looks pretty suspicious. You know, he is a corporate lawyer, and this, he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's. And Joe Biden and Donald Trump wins. Now, to be clear, what is my position? Because people are accusing me of being a cheerleader for Joe Biden. I'm a cheerleader for this republic and defeating Trump. I've made it clear. If Joe Biden has to go, then he has to resign the presidency as well. He's got to make sure that our vice president is running as an incumbent. She is the vice president. It's her turn. If he goes, it has to be Harris. The idea that I'm hearing, where we get rid of Joe and toss it into an open convention, those people are saying they don't support Harris. They don't think she can win either. If Joe Biden steps aside and Harris doesn't get the nomination, God help this party. God help America. But there are people, big donors, who don't think Joe can win. They also don't think she can win, and they also don't want her to win. Do you honestly believe the people calling for Joe to step aside right now are doing so in the name of a free and open convention? No, they have their candidates. They didn't get rich enough off Joe Biden. And their candidates are not Harris. They may not even be Newsom or Whitmer. If we come out of this, if Joe steps aside and we come out of that open convention without Vice President Harris as the nominee, that would be the big donors taking over the party. Once again, they already have taken over the party. It would be different big donors taking over the party. Joe formed a coalition with certain donors. Other members of the donor class have been left out. Different donors don't have a seat at the table, so they want to get rid of Joe. These are donors in the Democratic Party who feel they don't have a seat at the table. Get rid of Joe. Let's put a candidate in who will give us a seat at the table. This is a civil war in the Democratic Party between the donor class. And right now, as I'm speaking, there is a donor primary going on. I'm not making this up. There is a donor primary going on right now. Silicon Valley, Wall Street, the big media moguls and the bankers are having their big annual meeting. Every summer they meet in Idaho. I think it's called Sun Valley, right? Sun Valley, Idaho. This guy Allen, has been holding this big event every year. And that is the donor primary. That's all they're talking about right now. And if you don't believe me, did you watch our president's speech in Michigan last night? Wasn't he great? Called Donald Trump a rapist. You know who was missing at Joe Biden's big speech in Michigan? The Democratic governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. You know where she was? She didn't campaign. The governor of Michigan wasn't with Joe last night. You know where she was? She was in Sun Valley, Idaho, being vetted by the donor class. Because the donor primary is going on right now. $90 million in donations to the DNC have been frozen until Joe Biden steps aside. And they're all meeting right now in Sun Valley. And Gretchen Whitmer, she chose Sun Valley, Idaho over our president. She's being vetted after they topple our president. So they think She wants to be at the top of the ticket. And that should tell you what you need to know about her and what Joe Biden is up against. Instead of supporting Joe Biden in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor, chose Sun Valley. She chose the richest people in America over our president. But tell me again about how this is all about saving our Constitution. It has nothing to do with ego and greed. What is the governor of Michigan doing in Sun Valley when we have a president campaigning in Michigan, which is one of the three key states in this election? Here are some of the people arriving for the big Sun Valley meeting of the moguls. There's Oprah and Gayle King. Gayle looks very happy. There's Barry Diller. There's Barry Diller and his wife, Phyllis Diller. Is that Phyllis Diller? No, I'm sorry. That's Diane von Furstenberg, his wife. What a cute, loving couple they are. I wonder what the secret to their marriage is, how they keep it together. I could use some tips. I should really speak to them because I've had so many failed marriages. They should. How do they keep it together? There is Tim Cook, the head of Apple. He's arriving at Sun Valley. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. Bill Gates. Everybody's there. It's the most important conclave of the year. To give you an idea of how important Sun Valley is, Jeffrey Epstein came back from the dead to attend, to help vet the next Democratic nominee. There's Jeff Bezos. They're all there in Sun Valley, the heads of the studios, the heads of all the banks, Silicon Valley. They're all in Sun Valley this weekend while $90 million is being withheld from the DNC until Joe Biden steps down. And the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, is there. She couldn't campaign with my president last night in her home state. She had to be at Sun Valley. Is she a banker? Is she a studio head? Is she a Silicon Valley entrepreneur? Is she a Republican? Does she identify with the ruling class? What is the Democratic governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, doing at Sun Valley when our president is trying to win Michigan? Why weren't you with Joe Friday night? Oh, because you're running. You want the top spot. You want Joe to step aside. But it's the Constitution that's at stake. You're looking at Maryland Governor Wes Moore. That is Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. Very popular. A lot of people think Wes Moore, Governor Wes Moore, should be at the top of the ticket instead of Joe Biden. And there he is at Sun Valley talking with the odious, despicable Henry Kravis. Who is Henry Kravis, you ask? He invented leveraged buyouts. He bought Nabisco and R.J. Reynolds. R.J. Reynolds, the cigarette manufacturer, he bought Nabisco, merged with R.J. Reynolds, and he bought the company 3 decades ago for $31.4 billion by borrowing, let's say, $31.4 billion. That's what a leveraged buyout is. And this troll, this homunculus, invented leveraged buyouts. You buy the company by first going to a bank, and you say to the bankers, look, I'm going to buy this company for $31.4 billion. And for collateral, I'm going to use the company I'm trying to buy. You understand how this, he invented it. It's not smart, it's just evil. It's like going to the bank and saying, I have no money, but I want to buy a $10 million mansion in Beverly Hills. And I want you to lend me all the money. I want you to lend me $10 million to buy this $10 million mansion. And my collateral will be the $10 million mansion that I'm going to buy. If I can't pay you back the $10 million loan, you get the $10 million house. And the bank says, well, that's I like that. So the bank gives you $10 million and you buy a $10 million mansion, and then you pay the debt back by selling everything in the mansion. The fixtures, the moldings, the mold, the rats, the cockroaches, the termites, the copper wires. You strip it clean and then pay the bank back. And then, after this house has been just gutted, you try to flip it. You try to get more money, and you're stealing a little money, skimming a little money, I'm sorry. And if you lose a little money on the sale of the house, it doesn't matter because then it's a tax write-off. See, Kravis invented that, but with companies. He buys Nabisco R.J. Reynolds for $31.4 billion. It's a leveraged buyout, which means he borrows most of the money. He goes to the bank. He says, I'm going to buy this company for $31.4 billion. I need you to give me $31.4 billion, and the company will be my collateral. And so they give him the $31.4 billion. He buys RJR Nabisco, and he transfers the $31.4 billion loan onto the books of that company. He buys the company and he says, guess what, everybody? We're now $31.4 billion in debt. How'd that happen? Well, I borrowed $31.4 billion to buy this company. So I have to fire half the employees, raid your pension fund, and just start gutting the company. Office buildings sold. He strips the company down to its studs, and then he sells the studs. All the time collecting enormous fees. He's pocketing fees because it's really about the fees. It's not turning the company around. You know how Gordon Gekko in Wall Street says, I'm here to turn your company around. No, he's there to just gut it. And what happened with RJR Nabisco, Kravis gutted it, collected fees, and he sold RJR Nabisco at a loss, but he made out okay. The company was gutted. The bank got paid back. Assets from the company were transferred into Kravis's other accounts, and he loses a little money on the sale of the company, writes it off on his taxes. And here is the Democratic governor of Baltimore hanging out with Henry Kravis this week in Sun Valley. And people say, well, I want my governor hanging out with investors. They bring jobs to Baltimore. Henry Kravis isn't an investor. He doesn't bring jobs to Baltimore. What he does do, what people like him do, they privatize government services. That's their game. This is the kind of guy who says, I can assure you that that's what's going on. Henry Kravis is trying to convince the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, in that meeting that they had, that, the governor can save money by firing state workers and replacing them with non-union private contractors from companies like McKinsey, Pete Buttigieg's old company, or Booz Allen, where Snowden worked and ended up getting his hands on classified material. That's what the governor is being told. That you should be working with McKinsey and Booz Allen and all these other independent contractors to provide government services, state government services. Yes, they're going to charge more than your state employees do, and they're going to do a piss poor job. But McKinsey and Booz Allen, not only do they donate to your political campaigns if you give them contracts, they also find governors work after they're no longer a governor. That's the conversation that Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, is having in Sun Valley. This isn't about bringing jobs to Baltimore. This is about donations for his next run for governor or his run for president. And this is about his job after he's governor. This is what's wrong with the Democratic Party. While Joe Biden is running for his life to beat Donald Trump, Gretchen Whitmer, Wes Moore, they're out in Sun Valley sucking up to the donor class. You're listening to the Mop-Up for July 13th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. All those transcripts are made possible by listeners who went to shopdavidfeldman.com and bought crap like my Rudy Giuliani mugshot coffee mug and my Donald Trump mugshot coffee mug, or my Still a Democrat t-shirt, or my Still a Democrat coffee mug, and my Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. And nobody buys that. Instead, they buy the Trump fart filtration mask and the Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea chef's apron. Go F yourself, everybody, seriously. I mean, to buy Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea chef's apron, I mean, seriously. I don't know why I bother even doing this show. Nobody buys the crap I want. Like this, Still a Democrat, that's clever. Made in Los Estados Unidos, the coffee mug shots. This is like clever. But no, you buy the fart filtration masks and the Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea chef's apron. You sicken me. You people sicken me. By the way, I'm drinking from a David Ferdman Show coffee mug. My nephew Leonard thinks my last name is Ferdman and not Feldman. I've got a warehouse filled with David Ferdman coffee mugs, t-shirts, and hoodies. If you want to help a brother out, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and relieve me of my David Ferdman Show coffee mugs, t-shirts, and hoodies. Leonard, my sister's son, Leonard, he wanted to be a stuntman, and he got out to Hollywood, and he realized he has acrophobia. He's got a fear of heights, and you can't be a stuntman if you're afraid of heights. So he's come back to the New York metropolitan area, and Leonard. It's been a little more than 2 weeks since Joe Biden turned in his disastrous debate performance. Consensus among the chattering classes is Joe Biden cannot win in November. You know, Democrats are privately saying, I love Joe, he's the greatest president we've ever had, but he's going to lose. That's what they're all saying. Paul Krugman of the New York Times, Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, calls Joe Biden the most successful president in my lifetime. But he can't win. And I must speak out. He cannot win. Do you have any polling on this? No, but everyone here at the New York Times says he can't win. He can't win, and I must speak out. George Clooney, seen here with Harvey Weinstein, said, I can no longer in good conscience remain silent about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Yes, as the picture of George Clooney with Harvey Weinstein clearly demonstrates, people must speak out, even when it's unpopular, even when it can damage your career. You must speak out the way George Clooney almost did about Harvey Weinstein. Came this close to speaking out about Harvey Weinstein. This is what George Clooney, people get really pissed at me for going after George Clooney, but this is what George Clooney, seen here with Harvey Weinstein, said after Weinstein was arrested for rape. Quote, this is George Clooney. Quote, Harvey's admitted to it, and it's indefensible. Indefensible. This is what George Clooney said. I've known Harvey for 20 years. He gave me my first big break as an actor in films like From Dusk Till Dawn. Harvey gave me my first big break as a director with Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. We've had dinners. We've been on location together. We have had arguments, but I can tell you that I have never, ever seen any of this behavior. Ever. Full stop. Period. George Clooney never saw any of it. 20 years he worked with Harvey Weinstein. Didn't have a clue that Harvey's a rapist. 20 years. Salma Hayek. You're friendly with Salma Hayek. She never brought up Harvey Weinstein. Interesting. Ashley Judd. She never told you about Harvey Weinstein. Interesting. 20 years George Clooney worked with Harvey Weinstein. Dinners, location, arguments, directed movies for Harvey Weinstein. Didn't have a clue that Harvey Weinstein is a serial rapist. Everyone else in Hollywood knew that Harvey Weinstein was a rapist, except George Clooney. You know, maybe when it comes to politics, we shouldn't depend on George Clooney's ability to survey the lay of the land. Not so sure his observational skills are keen enough to tell us who's going to win in November and who can't. I mean, if he didn't know that Harvey Weinstein is a rapist, 20 years he knew the guy, but he's going to tell us whether or not Joe Biden can win in November? By the way, I like George Clooney. As much as I like Rob Reiner. People rise to their highest level of incompetence. George Clooney, I mean, the guy is amazing. He mastered movies as a writer, director. He has his own line of tequila, Nespresso. Isn't he selling Nespresso? Great father, great husband, politically active. Eventually, somebody like George Clooney, who just keeps succeeding and succeeding, the law dictates that eventually he's going to rise to his highest level of incompetence. And here he has found his highest level of incompetence: politics. Politics. So George, here's an idea. Just raise money for the Democratic Party and kindly keep your effing mouth shut. Your job is to raise money, not tell us how to spend it. Okay? Get with the program. This is the problem with the Democratic Party. The millionaires and the billionaires buy the table and then they think they deserve a seat at it. No. Your job is to keep your effing mouth shut and just give the Democratic Party money, and we get a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, and then we rewrite the tax code and take all your money, George Clooney. That's the way it works here in David Feldman's Democratic Party. See? We get a filibuster-proof Senate, we rewrite the tax code, and we take away 90% of everything you own over $1 billion. That's the way it works. So shut up. Just give us your money. The Republicans are running a sociopath, and we're running someone who is very, very, very old. And maybe he won't finish out the second term, but we have a terrific vice president. That's it. Get with the program. Get with the program. Biden tried to get ahead of all this. As you know, last Friday, he did that big interview with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. It was watched by 8 million people. Not good enough. Thursday, Joe did a primetime press conference after spending all day working the NATO event. I had to take a 3-hour nap Thursday before the press conference. He does the NATO event and then the big boy press conference, which was watched by 23 million people. The New York Times says that press conference got better ratings than the Academy Awards. Imagine that. Biden might, dare I say, be even more powerful and popular than a room filled with Hollywood celebrities. But still, we're told, not good enough. Not good enough. He's going to lose. Where are they getting this information? I beg them, show me a poll. 538, it's the big polling aggregator. It's an election modeler, is what they call it. As of this morning, it now puts Joe Biden ahead of Donald Trump in the Electoral College. 538, go to 538. They say Biden has a better chance of winning the Electoral College this morning than Donald Trump. I'm going to go over some polls with you now. I've begged the people who say Joe's got to show me the proof. A new Morning Consult poll shows Biden picked up 1 point since the debate and is now only behind Donald Trump by 2 points nationally. In other words, the debate helped Joe Biden. Before the debate, Trump was leading him by 3 points. After the debate, Trump is only leading him by 2 points. Morning Consult poll, all within the margin of error. Joe also picked up independents after the debate. You all know this, okay? According to another poll, Joe Biden won over independents after the debate. Those are just 3 polls. Well, it's a polling aggregate, 538. That's huge. Go to 538. It is what you call an election modeler, and it runs all these variations and scenarios. And they're now saying Joe Biden has a better chance of winning the Electoral College than Donald Trump. You got the Morning Consult poll and this other poll that MSNBC was talking about with the independents. But you got this handful of House Democrats calling for Joe to pass the torch and let someone else set fire to the Democratic Party. Joe Biden saying, no, I'm not leaving. Repeatedly every day, I'm not leaving, I'm not stepping down. And that prompted former Speaker Nancy Pelosi to go on MSNBC and say, time is running out. President Biden needs to make a decision. Nancy, he made up his mind. Sounds more like time is running out for you. Panic, we are told, has set in among low-level White House staffers looking for their next job, so they begin to leak. Senator Mark Warner in the Senate convening secret private meetings to figure out how do we gently nudge Joe aside. But Joe says over and over again, conversation over, I'm running. And he says, I'm running, I'm not stepping down, it's out of the question. And Democrats, pundits, strategists, they say, he's got to make up his mind. He's leaving people in the lurch. If Joe Biden's going to stay in the race, then he's got to tell us, I'm staying in the race. But Joe's the one with dementia, not Nancy Pelosi, not the Democratic strategists, not the lobbyists who keep saying, Joe, the window is closing. He's got to make up his mind. He's made up his mind. Why? Well, the stock market hit a new high on Friday. New inflation report came out this week showing consumer prices actually went down. Inflation is now running at an annual rate of just over 3%. You want to get it down to 2%. That is the mandate of the Federal Reserve. The president is kind of mandated to get unemployment down to 4% and a little below, and you're supposed to get inflation down to 2%. That's the sweet spot. So last week, a new report showed that Joe added more than 200,000 new jobs in June. And you know what he said during Thursday's press conference? If you watched, he said, I added 2,000 new jobs in June. Came out wrong. He was supposed to say I added 200,000 jobs. Or maybe he said 200,000, but it sounded like 2,000 because he's old. There's a trade-off to all this. You got to take the good with the bad. The man has wisdom. He knows how to get things done. But you have to lean in and pay attention to what he says. Or you can just read about his accomplishments. Look at his economy. He admits there's more work that needs to be done, but he's almost hit the sweet spot. 4% unemployment, 2% inflation. Salaries in America are now outpacing inflation. And if anyone watched the press conference, he told us the truth about inflation. Corporations are doubling profits by doubling prices. That's a fact. Read the quarterly reports. The companies that are doubling their prices are doubling their profits. But every single columnist for the New York Times says publicly, every single Democrat says privately, Joe Biden can't win. We must make way for a stronger, younger candidate because the Democrats, this is what we keep hearing, our bench is so deep. That's what I keep hearing. Make way for the young guns. We have such a deep bench. Do we? No. Again, if you could show me that somebody, Harris could whoop Trump's ass, I'd say, Joe, you got it. Let me go over the polling. A new Emerson poll of 1,370 registered voters just came out. It shows Donald Trump and Joe Biden tied. Dead heat. 10 days after the debate, They're tied. How can that be? Abigail Disney assured us that Joe can't win. They're all meeting in Sun Valley, Idaho right now to pick Joe's replacement. Barry Diller is there. He says Joe can't win. The New York Times says the Democrats have a deep bench and that someone younger will wipe the floor with Trump. And yes, Trump and Biden are tied in this Emerson poll. But what do the voters know? Get rid of Joe. Bring in a closer who will win this thing in November. When democracy is on the line, you can't ask the people what they think. Get someone who can win. Well, let's look at the Emerson poll. So Biden and Trump are tied. The same poll shows Trump beating Vice President Harris by 7 points. But I thought she was going to beat Donald Trump. You put Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket, she loses to Trump by 7. Tied with Joe Biden. But certainly the bench is deep. Same poll. Gavin Newsom loses to Trump by 8 points. Gretchen Whitmer loses to Trump by 10 points. She's all busy in Sun Valley right now, sucking up to the donors. She forgot about the voters. She loses to Trump by 10. Buttigieg by 10. Bernie by 6. Isn't that interesting? Bernie does better. Elizabeth Warren by 10. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, loses by 8. Hillary loses by 7. Al Gore loses by 5. But only Joe Biden is tied with Donald Trump. Makes no sense. Rob Reiner says Joe's going to lose. Well, who cares what a few polls say, right? The real poll is what The Economist, the Boston Globe, the New York Times, Rob Reiner, Abigail Disney, George Clooney, and Barry Diller think. And 100% of them say Joe can't win. That's the only poll that we have to pay attention to. Everyone in Hollywood says Joe Biden can't win, and we have to go with someone younger. How unusual that the people who run Hollywood would insist on going with someone younger. So unlike them. They keep saying, just wait, new polling, it's going to come out showing Joe can't win. Right. Because the American people aren't protective of Joe Biden. When they see the donor class turning on Joe Biden, when they see him being stabbed in the back, the American people don't get protective of Joe Biden. This is the best thing that ever happened to Biden. Well, the Washington Post came out with a new poll. So I try not to get angry because there's so many people who just spew emotion and this is what I think, this is what I feel, and they have no empirical data. And the Washington Post came out with a new poll this week. What does it show? Dead heat. Another dead heat. Tied. Statistical tie. Well, obviously, this is how dangerous Joe Biden has gotten. The American people have caught his delusion. Joe Biden is delusional, and he's created a mass psychosis. He has flummoxed not a vast majority, but a majority of Americans. He's flummoxed them. He's because he's flummoxed and we've caught the flummox. The American people are in the same denial as Joe Biden. He is patient zero for befuddlement. We're all delusional. We think Joe can win. We're going to vote for him. After that disastrous debate performance, the interview with George Stephanopoulos, the American people are just as confused as Joe. They still think he can win. Obviously, if they did their homework and read George Clooney's op-ed piece in the New York Times, or James Carville's op-ed piece in the New York Times, or Ashley Judd's op-ed piece in the USA paper, USA Today, or Rob Reiner's latest tweet, they would know Joe can't win. Why are you in denial, America? He can't win. Well, obviously, the wealthy elites who control the Democratic Party or want to gain control of the Democratic Party. This is a civil war, warring tribes of corporate elitists fighting one another. The wealthy elites, just like Joe Biden, need to do a better job at messaging. They're not messaging properly. They're saying Joe Biden can't win, but the American people aren't getting the message. They're saying he's old, he's senile. American people aren't getting the message. And don't get me wrong, the wealthy elitists, the David Axelrods who work for them, James Carville, they're doing a great job destroying Joe Biden within the party. Everyone in the party knows what a great job James Carville and David Axelrod and the Pod Save America hacks who work for Obama, we all know what a great job they're doing destroying Joe Biden. Kind of the same way everyone in the party knows what a great job Joe Biden has done these past 3.5 years. But the voters don't know this. The voters don't know that Joe has done a great job. And the voters also don't know how great a job the wealthy elitists are doing destroying Joe Biden. The wealthy elitists, Pod Save America, James Carville, David Axelrod, they're bad at messaging. They're just as bad at messaging as Joe Biden is. Odd, isn't it? The ones who say Joe is bad at messaging have trouble messaging. The American voter isn't getting the message. Pod Save America, David Axelrod, James Carville. And you know, that's all you guys have to do is message. That's your job, is to message. You know, Joe Biden is saving America. He doesn't do a podcast called Pod Save America. All those pricks have to do is message. Axelrod, Carville, they're paid to message. And their messaging Joe is no good. He's old and he can't win, but the polls say otherwise. The people whose only job is to message are really bad at messaging. So maybe we should stop listening to their message. Maybe Pod Save America, David Axelrod, and James Carville should hang it up. Because it turns out Joe's garbled message with broken syntax, it's a message that connects with voters. They trust that message. But when you're talking about Pod Save America, when you're talking about David Axelrod and James Carville, who cares what the American people think? This is the poll that counts. A poll of George Clooney, Ashley Judd, Barry Diller, Charles Barkley, and Rob Reiner. 100% of them say Joe's no good. Well, I should move on here. We got some Democrats in the House, one in the Senate, who are bravely calling on Joe to quit. And these are big names, lions of the Senate and House, people we turn to. Household names like Democratic Congresswoman Brittany Peterson, who represents Colorado's 7th Congressional District. She's saying Joe should step down. Jim Himes of Connecticut just said Joe lost. Jim Himes of Connecticut and Greg Stanton of Arizona. These are all A-list members of the House. I mean, sure, they don't sit on any committee, they don't chair any committees, they're not part of the leadership, but Bradley Schneider of Illinois and Senator Pete Welch of Vermont, one senator, Senator Pete Welch of Vermont, has said Joe can't win. I mean, these are the politicians whose every word we hang on. Does anyone know? Are they just making names up? Is there a Senator Pete Welch of Vermont? Is there actually a Democratic senator named Pete Welch of Vermont? I'm pretty sure Pete Welch played rhythm guitar for Fleetwood Mac back in the early 70s. I don't think he's a senator from Vermont. But you got to listen to him. Got to listen to these people. It doesn't matter what the polling says, because once Americans discover that Joe Biden has lost the confidence of Democratic Congressman Ed Case of Hawaii, the dominoes will start tumbling down. Who the F is Ed Case of Hawaii? Seriously, I follow this stuff the way some people follow baseball. I follow this stuff the way I used to follow basketball. Who the F is Ed Case of Hawaii, Pete Welch of Vermont, Bradley Schneider of Illinois? Who are the Jim Himes of Connecticut? Congresswoman Brittany, who are these people? But they're boldly going out in front and saying Joe Biden has to quit. The nobodies in Congress, people I've never heard of, losers, are telling Joe how to win. Let's ask the losers in the Democratic Party how the Democratic Party can win. They're the ones telling Joe to step aside and make way for new blood. You think maybe because they're so completely out of the loop and so unimportant, sitting on the sidelines, nobody consulting them, you think maybe that may be why they think Joe Biden has to go? Hey, I've had jobs where I was marginalized, and I went, screw them. I hope this company goes out of business. Be honest. I mean, you can only be a team player for so long, but when you're being diminished, like Pete Welch of Vermont, formerly with Fleetwood Mac, Ed Case of Hawaii, Greg Stanton of Arizona, Jim Himes of Connecticut, nobody cares what these people think. And they think it's because of Joe Biden. If there was somebody else, then I'd be important. I'd be in the loop. So Joe Biden can't win. He's old because nobody listens to me. Well, Joe Biden isn't listening to them. Instead, he hosted the big NATO conference and worked with world leaders on Ukraine, wasting his time on Ukraine while ignoring the real crisis at home, which is Maureen Dowd from the New York Times says Joe Biden can't win. That's the crisis. So Thursday night, he holds this massive press conference, and It was make or break. The entire country was watching. Yeah. But during a seamless 1-hour press conference Thursday night, where Biden showed complete command of every single global hotspot, the president mixed up the names Harris and Trump. He accidentally said Vice President Trump when he meant to say Vice President Harris. And earlier in the day, he accidentally called Vladimir Zelensky Vladimir Putin. You know, he caught himself, but he made the mistake. And obviously, this means on Election Day, voters are left with no other choice than picking the Nazi. Joe, 2 gaffes at the NATO conference. We have to elect the Nazi, Donald Trump. And yet, despite all this, brand new polling comes out Friday morning. Brand new polling. A+ polling. A Marist poll. State of the art. Doesn't show a tide. Shows Joe Biden leading Donald Trump by 2 points. Keep it up, Clooney. Just keep doing this, Abigail Disney and Barry. Just keep telling the American people that Joe Biden is. This may be, like a Bernays, a trick that Bernays invented in the 1920s, where you conspire with the ruling elite to have them turn on Joe Biden, so the great unwashed become protective of him. This may be, if I were a Republican, that's what I would say. That's what's going on. That it's a conspiracy. The wealthy donors have turned on Joe Biden to win over Trump supporters who hate the wealthy elitists. That's what's going on. It's anyway, Marist poll. Biden beats Trump by 2. Headline, though, Joe's unfavorability rating, 45 points. Unfavorability rating, 45 points. People don't like him. Can't win. Trump's unfavorable rating, 10% worse. But doesn't matter. More people dislike Donald Trump than Joe Biden, but it's Biden's approval ratings that are in trouble. Joe went to Michigan following the big press conference, and I've covered that. Okay. Where are we doing here? Let's go to ABC, and then we'll wrap it up. This is how ABC covered the crisis. There's a crisis. Let's watch.
Hollywood speaking out for sure. You have this op-ed from actor George Clooney now. He threw this multi-million-dollar fundraiser for the president, and now he's come forward and said, the president needs to step aside. We need to pick a new Democratic nominee here. Okay, George Clooney throws a fundraiser, $30 million. We need to listen. Go ahead. What's going on, ABC? And then now I'm seeing even on The View, actor Michael Douglas came forward saying the same thing. Michael Moore, Jon Stewart, all these sort of heavy hitter Hollywood entertainment types kind of jumping on behind these 8 House Democrats that have now defected, calling for the president to drop out for re-election. Oh, my God. You have Michael Douglas, Michael Moore, George Clooney, Jon Stewart, and 8 House Democrats all calling on Joe to step aside. Why aren't the American people listening to Michael Douglas, Michael Moore, George Clooney, Jon Stewart, and 8 House Democrats that nobody's ever heard of? Let's please continue. It seems like the dam is breaking. Yes, the dam is breaking. I keep hearing that. The dam is breaking because
Michael Douglas, Michael Moore, George Clooney, and Jon Stewart, and 8 House Democrats who nobody's ever heard of. The dam is breaking. Go ahead. This is Jay O'Brien of ABC News. So is the dam breaking?
And that's the interesting question that kind of faced us at the beginning of this week is, would the dam break when lawmakers finally return to Capitol Hill? They haven't been here since that debate performance until the beginning of this week. And we've seen drips and drabs of lawmakers coming forward over the last few days and saying they're either concerned about Biden's ability to win. A lot have said that. And then, of course, you have those 8 Democrats. You're seeing them on your screen.
Okay, so the dam hasn't broken, but we're beginning to see drips and drabs. And let's take a look at the drips and drabs. We have Adam Smith, he's a drip. Rahul Grahava, he's a drab. Lloyd Doggett, he's a drip and a drab. Mike Quigley, he's a drunk. Seth Moulton, used to be a drunk, now he's dry. He's a dry drab. Angie Craig, she's a drip. Mikey Sherrill, she's a drooler. She's a mouth-breathing, drooling drip. And finally, Congressman Pat Ryan, he's a drip and a drab. Go on, Jay O'Brien of ABC News. Does the Army Corps of Engineers need to be called in to bolster the dam?
Op-ed also.
Go ahead.
I've talked to House Democratic sources who said that Pelosi,
Hang on. What's going on?
I can tell you that Clooney op-ed also reverberated around the halls of Capitol Hill here this morning.
Okay, so the Clooney op-ed reverberated around the halls of Capitol Hill, says Jay O'Brien. Michael Regan, the head of the EPA, that day testified before House Oversight on how the Supreme Court's recent decision to overturn the Chevron deference will affect the agency's ability to keep our air and water clean. Bernie Sanders held hearings this week on medical debt. We learned that 1 out of every 4 cancer patients either lose their home or declare bankruptcy. Well, we didn't learn that because we're learning about drips and drabs, the dam. But if you watched the hearing on C-SPAN, you would have learned that. You would have also learned that 42% of all cancer patients in America have zero money left within 2 years of their diagnosis. But according to Jay O'Brien of ABC News, all anyone on Capitol Hill could talk about was George Clooney's op-ed piece in the New York Times. You know, we could be talking about medical debt and how the pharmaceutical companies that sponsor ABC News are price gouging, but that's not what Americans care about. They don't care about how a cancer diagnosis will affect their family, because George Clooney has diagnosed something far more ominous than cancer. Biden can't beat Trump. And it's reverberating around the halls of Congress, says Jay O'Brien of ABC News. Not necessarily reverberating throughout the hearing rooms of Congress, throughout the halls of Congress where nobody actually works. The halls where people are walking from their offices to their hearing room or to the actual Senate or House floors. You could, Jay O'Brien of ABC News, cover what's being said in those actual rooms. Instead, you choose to cover what you hear Congress talking about in between doing their work, in the halls, on their way to doing work. And the halls are reverberating with George Clooney's op-ed piece in the New York Times, reverberating off the walls. George Clooney, and how was your 4th of July vacation, and what are your plans for Labor Day? And George Clooney, that's what's reverberating in the halls of Congress. And that's the most important thing to cover, what people are talking about in the halls of Congress. Not the offices, not the hearing rooms, not the Senate floor or the House floor. The halls of Congress reverberating with George Clooney's op-ed piece. Go ahead, Jay O'Brien, reporting from the halls of Congress, reverberate away. Tell us what kind of impact the George Clooney op-ed piece reverberating through the halls of Congress. What kind of effect has it had on our members of Congress?
I've talked to House Democratic sources who said that that Clooney op-ed didn't turn down the pressure on their bosses. Some of these are staff sources, one way or the other.
Oh, so we have a headline here. No impact one way or another. The headline is very important. Congress indifferent to George Clooney's call for Joe Biden to step aside. Indifference reverberating throughout the halls of Congress. We must keep this conversation going about George Clooney and his op-ed piece. So is Congress not listening to Clooney? Are the American people listening to George Clooney? Here's George Stephanopoulos, who, by the way, had to apologize for being videotaped on the streets of New York after he told someone with an iPhone that Biden doesn't stand a chance to last 4 years in the White House. Just random, just George Stephanopoulos, random guy with a cell phone runs the video camera, and George Stephanopoulos, in his infinite wisdom, opines that Joe Biden won't last 4 years in his second term. Okay, George Stephanopoulos.
Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein with our new poll, big concerns about President Biden's age.
Okay, new ABC poll out. The headline, after George's interview with Biden, big concern about Joe Biden's age. That's the big headline, so let's hear from Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein.
This is a dead heat of a race. In the 2 weeks of the debate, so much has changed, but the horse race truly hasn't. Donald Trump up a single point, well within the margin of error. For contrast, back in April, he led by 2 points. We're basically where we've been all along, George.
We're basically where we've been all along, George. George says the big headline is Americans concerned about Joe Biden's age, but the polls don't show that. 2 weeks after the debate, Biden gained 1 point. George told us the lead story in the poll is big concern about Joe Biden's age, but it shows he's picked up 1 point in the 2 weeks since the debate.
In the 2 weeks of the debate, so much has changed, but the horse race truly hasn't.
The horse race hasn't. Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein, please clarify this. I don't understand.
We have a matchup with two very unpopular candidates. Biden viewed unfavorably by just 42% of the country. Trump's numbers considerably worse, only 34% favorability. That is 25 points underwater.
Okay. So the headline isn't that Joe Biden is old. The headline is people don't like Trump. It looks like, judging from your poll, that Joe Biden's got anywhere between an 8 to 9 point favorability rating. And I think you just misspoke. Let's play this again. As you can clearly see, if you're looking at this, let me go large here. As you can clearly see, Joe Biden's favorability rating is 42%. But I believe ABC Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein said Biden's unfavorability rating is 42%.
Biden viewed unfavorably by just 42% of the country.
You see that? Biden viewed unfavorably, he says, by 42% of the country. But if you look, he's viewed favorably by 42% and unfavorably by 50%. Let's devote a little more time to this mistake.
Biden viewed unfavorably by just 42% of the country.
Okay, and so again, you see he's viewed favorably by 42% of the country, not unfavorably. Here you just can see that ABC Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein, on national television, said Biden's unfavorable rating is 42%, but it's clearly 50%. What's going on here? ABC Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein is confused. Is this the early onset of Alzheimer's for ABC's bureau chief, political director Rick Klein? Would he agree to a neurological exam? He's way too young to be confusing favorability and unfavorability ratings, and I no longer trust him to read a poll. Who I choose to get my news from is important. And I want to make sure that ABC's bureau chief, political director Rick Klein, when he gets that 3 a.m. call telling him there's new polling, I want to make sure that he's lucid and clear-headed and can pick up that phone and say, why are you calling me at 3 a.m.? Because a new poll, are you out of your mind? I'll see you in 5 hours. We'll talk about the new polling then. It's a little late, everybody, to suddenly realize Joe Biden is old. He was old 8 years ago. Democrats, suck it up. Win, and then we can address his alleged cognitive decline in 2025. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening. It says July 14th on my over-the-shoulder shot, but it's July 13th. I will agree to taking a neurological exam. I don't know why it says July 14th when it's July 13th. I mean, the first sign of senescence is not knowing what day it is. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. All transcripts are free, and they are made possible. They're free because of listeners who purchased the Rudy Giuliani coffee mugshot, the Donald Trump coffee mugshot, the Still a Democrat T-shirt, the Still a Democrat coffee mug, the Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug, but very few people buy that. No, they buy the Trump fart filtration mask and the hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's apron. Please share this episode with your friends. If you would be so kind as to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, subscribe to my newsletter. Thank you to Bob, who keeps the conversation civil in the chat room. I just don't know what's going on. I don't know how people can get away with saying the things they say. I really don't. All right. Thank you. Have a great whatever. I'll see everybody probably, I don't know.